Buongiorno. Hello, friends.
Hi, friends. It's Caitlin and Shanika with Get Checkered, which is part of the Alberta podcast, locally grown and community supported. Oh my gosh, how are you doing, girl?
I'm tired. How you doing?
Yeah, me too. And it's something we talked about before we recorded, but we find that the early morning races are brutal, but we have way more energy than like the 3 p.m., 4 p.m. slump. Like we are kind of dead to the world. It's not great.
But it's all good. We do have actually a very exciting episode for you guys. So we found out, very unfortunately, that we recorded the F1 economics episode like quite a few months ago. And it was really good, right? But it didn't successfully upload. And so we just have like a blank. And so apologies to everyone that's tried to listen to that.
Yeah, we'll swap it in with today's content for sure. But we just left it. There was too many races going on, other things to talk about. We're like, we'll come back. Yeah, it's fine.
So but the long-awaited F1 economics episode is this week, you guys.
And the one that we've told people to listen to, and then we're like, why is the listens just not going up? It's like, because there's nothing there. Before we start on that, though, we do have a couple headlines this week. As you know, it's not a race week, but that doesn't mean the world of Formula One doesn't have stuff going on. So we'll chat about that before we get into the economics of the sport.
Yep, just some fun stuff that happened this week, you guys. Starting off with the Big Bang, the one that I love to see, so Shanika loves to see. Good stuff. Susie Wolff named as a CEO. I love it. Yeah. So like that Wolff family is just killing it, We're stoked to see women break that glass ceiling everywhere, especially in very like male dominated
industries
like this. It's pretty cool. So congrats, Susie. I actually wrote that from the Get Checkered account, Shanika. I hope you're not embarrassed. But
no, I think it's fine.
On her post. I was like, woo, you go, Susie.
No, I think that's great. I again, like this Wolff family, just so incredible. But she will be the CEO of the Venturi Racing Formula E team, which is at Montesquieu. Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah, that's how you say it. I think so. They're based out of Monaco, swanky. So we see pictures of like Susie and her family out of Monaco like all the time, and like her team's based out there, so it makes sense. Also Venturi, literally that reminds me of Twilight. Who is that band of the vampires, the bad ones? I think it might have been the Venturi.
It was like the Venturi or the Valtteri or something like that.
Valtteri. I like it. But yeah, anyway, so it's kind of Twilighty if you guys understand the reference. If you don't, you're too young. But I am just jealous of you, so it's fine. So back to Susie. With Venturi, she was team principal actually before this. She was like team principal even this past season. A former driver though, Jerome D'Ambrosio.
Perfect.
Will take her old position now. I'm still learning how to do those Italian last names with the D apostrophe. It's actually supposed to be like a the versus like a it's a D-A. So I would normally just say like a D'Ambrosio, and apparently that's not how you say those names in Italian. So I'm learning. Susie joined in 2018 into that team principal role. She was there for the 3 years and now will be stepping into CEO. It's a nice ring to it,
Yeah.
So this past year, a bit about the Venturi team. Like Shanika and I didn't follow it this year, but in the FE Teams Championship, this Venturi team actually came out 7th out of 12 teams, so kind of a mid-grid field.
Yeah.
Mid-grid field. I don't know.
Somewhere in the middle. That's okay.
Actually, one of their drivers, though, Eduardo Mortara, did come in 2nd in the Drivers' Championship, which is very exciting. So that's kind of cool. Like she's team principal with them, and they're doing well like that. So very good. And then kind of what we can expect to see, like what her roles might be as CEO. I got this from autosport.com. She will have to help with seeking out a new powertrain deal for the Gen 3 era, following the news that Venturi's current engine partner, Mercedes, will quit the series in his factory guys at the end of the 2022 term. So she's got to figure that out. She's at the top at the company. She's got to find big answers to big problems like that. And she'll also be overseeing the strategic and commercial operations of the team. Apparently, we won't be seeing her on the paddock as much, which is kind of upsetting. Shanka and I did want to see her at the Vancouver FE race next year. So I hope she shows up to that one. We'll just like send her a DM, be like,
I know. I'm like, if there's a way to see you, we would like to meet you in real life. That would be great.
Yeah. So, but she'll be behind the scenes doing all the big boss stuff. So
it's understandable that we probably won't see her, you know. Yeah. The next headline is tied to Barcelona, who's got an extended contract for the next 5 years now, I believe. So, oh gosh, here we go with pronunciation. It's not circuit because obviously it's in Spanish, but Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia.
See, Shanika and I did go to Barcelona. I say Barcelona,
yes.
You know those like people that do the exchanges and they're like, oh, I went to Barcelona this weekend. You're just like, stop being like this. Anyways, I'm like that. Shanika and I did go to Barcelona together. We were with our friend Anisha.
We had such a great time. It's such a beautiful place. So it's exciting to know that they have an extended contract though, because that means we got another place that we could go to. So the contract is renewed until 2026 now. There are going to be improvements made to the track and facilities ahead of the 2022 race. Some of the upgrades are tied to their ambitious sustainability plans. Caitlin, that's great. Do you have any?
It was good to see, like, because I remember in our sustainability episode we mentioned that like this circuit in particular, like it had, I can't even remember, but it had a whole bunch of stuff like even around it. They had the initiatives of like even like for the fans and everything, like no single use plastic stuff like that.
Yeah.
So as long like if it's going to be more, that's I'm good with that. I hope everyone else is excited to hear news like that.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what they would be, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. No, but yeah, it's cool.
From motorsport.com, the race has been valued at more than 200 million euros. What?
Right? I thought that point needed to be made in this podcast.
Nice. And the promotion of obviously tourism for Catalonia, which is, you know, a huge deal for all these places. So it just keeps the race as an important part of the local economy there. So I did not know it's valued at 200 million euros. That's fucking insane.
Right. So Shank and I go talking to F1 economics, of course, right? So I thought like we understand like these, everyone listening, like you'll hear that the tracks have to pay pretty much like FIA to even host the race. Like, when you hear that a race there can be valued at over 200 million euros, that's pretty good.
That's holy shit. But what I guess what sucks about it though is that, so normally, okay, I'm coming from a business perspective, so you grow something from the beginning, it gets a nice valuation, you know, 200 million, maybe more, that's exciting, but then you can sell it and actually get that money in hand. The thing is though, with these tracks and stuff, if you choose not to do the race or have the contract extended, you're kind of like done. And I think Caitlin and I mentioned it before, but we want to do an episode probably on just the abandoned tracks that we found all around the world. So then you're just kind of like fucked. Then the value just goes away. So I wonder if there's a way to make it, I mean, we've seen it with some tracks, right? Like they're multi-purpose and multi-use, but in some places they've just been completely abandoned. And it's like, then the investment and all of it's just gone. I don't know. Still haven't wrapped our minds around the sport yet.
Right.
And the last headline is kind of a sad one, exciting one. Caitlin, how do you feel about this headline?
It's like feel good and sad at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it.
It was Kimi's farewell party with Alpha this past week, you guys, and there was pictures and videos, and it was just a big celebration of Kimi, which is so cute to see. And then, but it's also sad because he's leaving the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's like mixed emotions for sure. I definitely think that he should have had more championships under his belt. The fact that he, even this season, I think at where we are at right now, he's ranked higher than Antonio in the standings. I was seeing that all over Twitter. Antonio has better luck qualifying, but Kimi, even in a shit car, performs. So it's like the end of a chapter, but a beginning of a new one for him. He posted it on Instagram, probably the most amount of letters we've ever seen him post on Instagram. So that's why I wanted to pull the quote. Thank you everyone for a night to remember. Thank you everyone for all the years together. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all the memories. You are good people. Sincerely, Kimi. I think that's probably the most we're going to get out of him. I am curious though at the end of the season, because this was with the Alfa Romeo team, if they'll do something bigger, because I was surprised to not see some of the drivers. I didn't see a single driver in any of the photos, meaning like Sebastian Vettel or Lewis Hamilton or these people that have kind of come up alongside him. So I don't know. I think that there might be another party coming.
Maybe. Who knows? That'd be cute if they did.
Right? I'm hoping so. So now
that's our updates for this week, you guys.
Yeah. Nothing too great. This episode is brought to you by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider in Alberta, offering internet, electricity, and natural gas with low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. Winter is coming, and energy usage for all Albertans will be increasing, so now is a great time for listeners to look at their utility bills and ensure that they're on the best plan. Albertans have a choice who they pay their utility bills to. Park Power is happy to provide free, no-obligation comparisons. If you decide to switch providers, it's easy. And you can feel good knowing you're supporting a local business and helping to give back to our communities with your utilities bills. Learn more at parkpower.ca. But now we're going to dive into the world of economics for the sport. So the way that I have it kind of written down is split into two sections. One just about the money coming into the sport versus the money going out. A lot of this information was pulled from, I think I mentioned them actually throughout. Yeah. There's tons of articles on this, so I'll make sure to link them in the description. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of resources / what we've heard over the last year. So Caitlin, Formula One is one of the most expensive sports in the entire world. However, it is not very profitable. And I think that's
wild.
And that's where we're going to start with all of this, because it's kind of touching on what I said about the tracks. Like, it's kind of crazy when you start thinking about how much money is going into the sport. So starting off with the money coming into the sport, one of the primary ways that they get money is sponsorship. So I'm sure, Caitlin, how many logos have you seen over the last little bit on these cars?
Okay, so a lot, right? I actually saw a very funny meme. I can't remember where it was, but it's like things that are actually not illegal in this world. It's like F1 cars don't need sponsorships, and it's just like an empty car, and it looks very wrong.
That's how much we've grown accustomed to it. I think there's sort of like iconic images that come to your mind too when you think about Formula One. I think is it Ferrari that had Marlboro for the longest time, the cigarette company, which obviously as times have changed, they stopped doing that. I think Shell is also a company that's been advertised heavily on the cars. So it's just been a part of Formula One since the beginning of Formula One. And aside from that, there's also product placement, and you can see that from what the drivers' shoes are all the way to what they're drinking at press conferences. Yes, this is a subtle dig at Red Bull and how much the boys are always carrying around Red Bulls, or Lewis Hamilton has his Monster.
It can't be healthy, the amount of Red Bull they're drinking. I don't think that's healthy.
No, I completely agree. I don't think it's healthy either. What other things? AlphaTauri, as we know, they named themselves after a fashion line, so it's like this weird cross promotional stuff with all the gear that they end up wearing. I think on the AlphaTauri side, though, obviously they're not paying to place their own brands, but it's like free promotion because they own the team. So it's all those things. But essentially it works like any other sponsorship. So brands pay the teams to be on the cars or to be a part of the clothing or whatever. and they have come from a variety of industries. Like I mentioned, Marlboro is like the one that I feel like is the most iconic. Also reminds me of Mad Men, Caitlin. I don't know if you have
I
you
never
watched
watched Mad Men. No.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
How have you not watched a Mad Men? There's a whole era, side tangent. There's a whole era of men who grew up watching Mad Men that decided to make Don Draper like their personality trait, only to now be in their like late 20s, maybe early 30s, being like, you know, Don Draper was the problem. Like he was the drama. He was very toxic. So I don't know, if you're looking for a great TV show that talks about that ad era, check out Mad Men. But if you're watching Mad Men, I would say the women empowerment is the most important part. Don Draper is actually like not that great of a human being.
People actually did that?
Yeah, like I don't know how many guys I know that were like, I just want to be like Don Draper, and then they get older and they're like, no, I don't want to be Don Draper, because in the end he's alone.
Well, at least they recognize that.
Spoiler alert.
Rather than later.
Right, it's called growth. Anyways, one of the other team sponsors that happened that I thought was interesting was FedEx, which is for Benetton, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. So like I said, just a whole bunch of shit. I think this year alone we've seen a lot of like crypto.com and like crypto companies being promoted everywhere. So it just goes with whatever's like in vogue at the moment and what consumers are buying.
And what team is it that like, I think we were talking about it when we first filmed this episode, but I think it's like the McLaren shirts. You just see like it's a list of sponsors, right? Just like on their clothing. And Shanika being like in the industry she's had experience in. And she's like, the amount of money from that, like that sheer number of sponsors is astonishing.
It's insane, because what we're talking about here is not just like the influencer sponsorships here, which honestly, if you're an influencer now, you can make a ton of money. But if you're thinking about the fact that Formula One is racing, what is it, like 26 plus days out of a year, right? Like, sorry, weekends out of a year. So there's pretty much a race every other weekend. For a brand, you're going to want to pay. For the team, you're going to want to charge a lot, but for the brand, you're going to want to pay for that, just because you know you're getting so much brand rub. But I would say for the teams like, what are the other teams? So for Red Bull and AlphaTauri, I feel like they just have it built the best, because they actually have, we've talked about this before, but like a product outside the brands and how they mishmash together. But it's just insane. Like these are multi-million dollar deals. If not, I would say the lowest end, probably a couple $100,000. But that's still a lot. So it's kind of insane. The other way, and probably the most lucrative way that Formula One makes money, sorry, y'all, that was Slack. I'm trying to, okay, Slack's off now. Okay. Is the TV rights, which I remember the first time we did this episode, I had no idea that about licensing and stuff like that. But though Formula One may not be as popular here in the States, the Formula One licensed the broadcast out to Sky News for $1 billion. That's billion with a B. Oh. So, okay, which makes me wonder, like, if they're already getting $1 billion from Sky News, like, why are they charging everyone so much money? Isn't it like $80 something for F1 TV?
Yeah.
Like, you're already making $1 billion from Sky News.
Whoa.
Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier this season, Netflix has expressed interest if there was an opportunity to stream the sport. But now we know how much that price tag would be. It would probably be around the $1 billion mark for them to do so. Exclusivity is probably more than that. So insane.
That's wild. Yeah, we did not have that number last time. That's
I know. I can't even think about $1 billion.
No, people try and put it into like put it with seconds, and they're like, oh, 1,000 seconds is blah blah blah, and then you go up to 10,000 blah blah blah, and they're like 1,000,000 seconds is equivalent to this, and then 1 billion seconds is equivalent to this, and it's just like, whoa. Whoa, damn.
It's hard to have a reference point with it, to be honest, but $1 billion, baby, that's what it costs. The next way that Formula One makes money is the track fees. And this is something that we alluded to this episode. I feel like we've talked about it on and off throughout the season. But when I wrote this episode, so like we said, like literally 6-8 months ago, I noted that I did not know this, but each track pays Formula One a fee to host the race. And it's around 40 million euros, dollars, whatever, depending on where they are.
Hold on, so they have 22 races next year, right?
Yeah.
That's almost that's almost at $1 billion right there from the tracks. That's at 880 million.
Oh God. I did note that some of the older tracks pay less, but that it's still around that mark, which is insane. And which goes back to what we talked about earlier this episode, which is like the financial viability for these countries that are hosting it. So it's just not as clear cut. And I think it's important that there is that push for tourism or sustainability or whatever they need to do to get people in and enjoying it, because if not, it just seems like it's kind of like a sinkhole, you know, like you're just throwing money at something and maybe not making it all back.
Right. And like we have to consider, you guys. So let's say, okay, if the Barcelona track is paying 40 million euros, but they're anticipating their like revenue to be 200 million, we have to consider they're not just paying the FIA, right? Like they have all their like maintenance costs, they have all the actual supply costs, they have the building costs that they're probably still paying off. Like, I wonder what the margin of profit actually is for those tracks.
This is to anyone that knows the answer. Please let us know, because generally speaking, in most businesses, anything that has like less than a margin of 30%, even 30% is not great, but anything less than 30%, you start to get into some scary territory when it comes to finances. Yeah, because it makes it hard to scale and continue like the upkeep of the track or whatever. Just entrepreneurship things. Like I know some stuff. It's just scary. Apparently, and I put apparently because I think I might have just read this in whatever article, which again will be linked. The track fees alone make up over 30% of Formula One's total revenue, which I think is a bit much. Like you feel as though they could make more money elsewhere instead of taking it from the countries that they want them to host. Like over 30% is coming from the countries. What?
Unless, okay, so because TV rights is going to be another probably 1/3. It's approximately the same amount. And then does F1 have their own sponsorship?
Yeah, I would.
Not really, right?
I mean, not really. Like they're doing some things now in some interesting spaces, moving a little bit more into like the crypto world and stuff like that. But also the teams are doing that on their own, and like the drivers are doing it on their own. So it's not as prominent. Like I do feel like it's a team-centered sponsorship approach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other 1/3 for F1's total revenue
is coming from the country.
Which we have the countries, we have TV rights, and then the remaining third would be a mishmash of everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
A mishmash of everything else. Some other things that I'll be mentioning, actually, in the 2 seconds.
Very good. Okay.
But so another form of money into the sport. So this comes from the YouTuber. The handle is called Autosport. So I wonder if it's autosport.com actually. And the reason why I'm like literally pulling this verbatim from them is because it was very complicated to me. And I had a hard time understanding what was being said. So there is nearly $1 billion in prize money given out, which means that they need to make that money come in. And it comes in from multiple different ways. We talked about like the Ferrari thing. Sorry, not the Ferrari, but just everything from sponsorship to the track fees to licensing. That's essentially what makes up Formula One and the cost of Formula One. But there are some other things. Anyways, so when we're talking about the money given out, Caitlin, you're gonna have to go with me. So the column 1 funding is that you need to be a team that finishes in the top 10 in the constructors for 2 years. Okay. And only 10 teams.
A team in the top 10. There's only 10 teams.
Exactly. So right now, since there's only 10 teams, they all get the first tranche of money.
And that's column 1. We call that column 1.
Column 1. And then the second tranche of money comes from, and again, this goes to the teams. The teams are paid based on where they placed in previous years of the championship, which we knew, with the winning team getting the most. That's why the point difference that we see right now coming down to the wire for fastest lap and other things ends up being so important, because you end up getting paid just so much more money if you finish first, and if you've also finished first in previous years. So it kind of compounds on one another. This is where, and even the notes where I say this gets weird, is Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari get constructors championship bonuses. And it's because they've won in previous years. You know, we know right now, still in the middle of like the Mercedes legacy, they won 8 years in a row. Ferrari has won decades ago. I feel like it's been a long time since they've had like a good streak going, but I think it was under Michael Schumacher was the last one. McLaren had their day. Red Bull also had theirs most recently with Sebastian Vettel leading the charge. So there we go. Red Bull gets another payment that's outside of everyone else's, like overlapping and stuff, because they've committed to a long-term deal. So I don't know what kind of hell Bernie Ecclestein's done just by cutting all these side deals, because it's like, okay, so now for everyone, we have the first column. Everyone has money coming to them because they've been in the constructors and there's only 10 teams. Great. Then they get paid based off of where they rank basically. And if they won the year previously and if they're winning now, great. We know that Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari get constructors bonuses because they've won like in the decades before. For some reason, Red Bull, which is an outlier, gets money because of a long-term commitment deal. Mercedes found out about this and finessed Bernie Ecclestone for another payment that comes with back-to-back wins. So they've had 7 in a row, right? So with ever those back-to-backs, they've gotten bonuses on top of it. William gets a heritage payment because they are the team has it been around the longest? No, I feel like it started with Ferrari.
I don't think so.
No.
And like, I'm surprised because you listed off Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, because they've won in the past. Well, so has Williams.
Yeah.
And so I was surprised Williams wasn't included in that list. Yeah. But I guess like they get their own money called this heritage one. Yeah. And I wonder if it's because they went through, like they were not as financially sound as those other ones.
And I actually think that's it. Like I literally think that they made up the heritage payment because Williams just doesn't have any money and like went through such a hard time. And the heritage payment is like 10 million. So it sounds ridiculous to be like, that's not very much. It's very much. It is a lot. But it's just like a payment that Formula One says they put in place to make sure that Williams can continue to race in Formula One. Again, tying to what Caitlin's saying, they just don't have any money. Obviously, things have changed, I think, in the last 2 years with ownership and stuff. So they're in a better space, but just a thing. Ferrari, though, has a long-standing team payment, and I wrote it's huge. I just don't have the numbers, so please go check out Autosport's video. Again, it'll be linked down below. And because they essentially started Formula One, they've been there since day one. When you think Formula One, you're likely thinking of a Ferrari vehicle in your head. But because that amount is so much, and they get it every single year, at the end of the season, you know, in the last few years, you would think that Mercedes would be taking the most amount of money, right? They're winning the championship, blah, blah, blah. No, because as soon as this like long-standing payment thing gets kicked in, it boosts Ferrari so much that it goes over all of the other teams around them. Yeah.
And this has happened for a long time.
For a long time, which is why they brought in the cost cap, right? Because it's just so ridiculous, the distribution of wealth, or the like not distribution of wealth in this sport, to try and level the playing field a little bit. Because I personally think it's ridiculous that every year Ferrari ends up taking the most amount of money, even if they're not winning championships. Like, I think that's ridiculous. But I also think it's ridiculous that, we talked about all these teams, and the only money that Alfa Romeo or Alpine are getting right now are just the general first column, which is because they're part of the top 10, which, I mean, at the same time, there's only 10 teams. So like, how fulfilling is that? Another question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of this added up together equals $1 billion that's injected into the teams, to keep them racing. Something that we've talked about pretty consistently and on and off this season is just about the paid drivers. So right now we have Lance Stroll, we have the person we never talk about. Arguably, maybe we should do a episode on this, Caitlin. I've seen some arguments that Guan Yu is a paid driver, but then I've seen some arguments saying that no, he's actually really great.
And this is a very interesting time to bring up the discussion, because Guan Yu just got the seat at Alpha. And people are saying it's like there's a difference between a paid driver and someone who comes with financial backing.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's true.
That's actually a good point. I don't know.
Right? Like, we know Checo comes with good financial backing.
True. True.
But I like Lance Stroll. He's a mid-grade driver, I would call him. Like, he on merit, he deserves to be on the grid, I think.
Yeah.
But I think maybe his way of getting in was like it was his dad that was his financial backer, which just made his life a lot easier than having to go out like check out and find a financial backer. But then we have the people's like Nicholas Latifi, arguable if he should be in F1, and like the other one that we don't mention on this podcast definitely does not deserve to be in F1. So that I would categorize those two probably as paid drivers.
Yeah, sorry. I always forget about Nicholas Latifi, and we shouldn't. Canadian should remember more, but I actually completely agree with you. I think that having that distinction is so important, because when we look at Oscar Piastri, the biggest issue of him coming into the sport was that he didn't have a strong enough financial backing, which sucks, which is why we're talking about all this today, because it's just not equitable for everyone. But anyways, I always forget about Nicholas Latifi. I'm sorry if anyone listening is a fan, because we do not talk about him unless there's an accident.
But hey, okay, if you're a Latifi fan, reach out to us and like we are open to conversation about Latifi, right?
100%. So as you know, we've kind of covered it here, but paid drivers are drivers that simply come in because they have money, some form of money,
to literally like buy a seat.
Yeah. And it's because the teams are suffering. So they essentially help fund the teams. Again, coming back to just all this wealth that's being spread around, how uneven it is. Having someone like the person we never talk about, the Russian person, his dad is a billionaire. So him coming in, and he actually expressed, Caitlin, we didn't talk about this, but I'm glad it's here. But I think this week mentioned that he still has a goal to buy a Formula One team.
The dad does?
Yeah. And I'm like, ooh. But I agree with Caitlin. I think the argument can be made with Lance Stroll. He's pretty much held his own in the middle and ended up on a podium or two. Yep.
I think like this season's not his season, but he's been able to prove that like he's better than being back at the grid. He is.
Yeah. So yeah. And if you're hanging out at the back of the grid, there's probably some question marks around like why you had that seat. Like there is, especially this time around with Nicholas Latifi. That's a little surprising. Anyways, so again, having these paid seats helps the teams continue to do what they can do. But of course it hurts some drivers and it kind of makes no sense sometimes. So the side projects I have labeled here, we've touched on it a little bit, but it's for the brands itself and not the team. So it's just all about marketing. So with Red Bull having a Formula One team. They just do a lot of marketing for Red Bull with the Formula One cars and the drivers. Case in point, I remember feels like it was not too long ago, but it was definitely a while ago, a couple months ago. I was at Walmart and Max Verstappen was there. There's a life-size cutout of him with a bunch of Red Bull cans around him. So that's one way they're able to just leverage that to help fund actually what their business is about, which is this product, this energy drink. I mentioned here AlphaTauri. It's the same thing with their clothing line. McLaren and Alfa Romeo both get brand rubs from the Formula One cars, but specifically to their actual cars. So I, for one, did not know. I'm not a car person. Caitlin, are you a car person? Caitlin's a little bit of a car girly. She
kind of. I mean, like, have I ever like taken apart a car and put it back together? No, I'm not that level.
No.
But do I drive? I drive a nice car, and I don't think I can ever not drive a nice car now. It's just it's something I don't know if I could go back. That's really bad to say, but I mean, it's true. And I have an appreciation when I see nice cars. I remember actually, you guys, okay, side tangent. So I was in Toronto working, like 2 years ago now?
Yeah, I think.
And you're staying at a hotel and there's a convention center in the same area. And come April was when all the like high school graduation was going on. And like this was a very swanky part of the GTA, like very rich in Vaughan. And so people were renting cars or like using their parents' cars. And there were so many McLarens just in the parking lot. I remember like my construction manager and I just walk up to one and we're like, hey, that's a nice looking car. And they just like look at us like we're poor peasants. Don't say anything. And I'm like, oh, look at that car. That was the closest I've ever got to one in person.
Yeah. And honestly, I am not a car girly, like at all. I love my 2007 Honda Civic. And if I got a new car, I probably get the...
Yes, you guys, Shanika is a Honda girl. So for all those lists, I say girls to be scared of, with Honda girls is number one.
I'm not sorry. Like truly, if I had the opportunity to get another car, I would probably get another Honda Civic.
Honda
like
is very reliable. Surprising that Shanika's not a big like Red Bull stan.
Yeah, not a Red Bull stan. But what I was gonna say is in my own personal life, like now when I see an Alfa Romeo, like I know what the logo is and I know when I see that car, like what it is and how it's like a really cool car. And I think that's what happens when you tie your brand to a Formula One vehicle. It's the same thing with McLaren. I actually know a little bit more about the cars now because of Formula One. So it does.
What about Mercedes, man?
I mean, we've already known about Mercedes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's brand rub both ways.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It happens all the way around for all the vehicles and whatever they're building, I guess, outside of it. But yeah, it's good. It's smart. I'm sure one day we'll do a deep dive into Red Bull, but I actually think it's brilliant that they bought a Formula One team because I'm like, it's just free marketing. And we see that also with remember how they used to put, I don't know if they've done this recently. No, I think they did it actually for the USGP, but how they take the Formula One car and put it everywhere. Like they had Max drive the side of a mountain. They had I think it was Danny Rick drive through the desert, like all that kind of stuff, and make these giant hype videos just for Red Bull. Like it has nothing to do with the actual sport. It's just someone driving something cool in a cool place.
Well, and so, okay, my thing with Red Bull, you guys, is like, I don't drink the drink because I don't actually think it's that healthy for you. But like Red Bull Sports is fascinating. And like their extremes are like, I love actually seeing stuff like that when they put the like Red Bull F1 car on top of like the tallest building in the world or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, that is cool, you know? I think just like it doesn't translate to the team for me, mostly because I have a big beef with Christian Horner, as I've been transparent about on this podcast. But like there are other extreme, like Red Bull does this because they want to associate Red Bull with like gives you wings, go extreme, be the best.
Exactly.
And they do that, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's like content marketing, sponsorship, and event marketing in a way that's like such a flywheel for them. It's fascinating, truly. But yeah, Caitlin's right. Everything they do is just tied to that idea of Red Bull gives you wings, and also they're infiltrating spaces that their target demographic is in, right? Like,
yep.
Typically speaking, who's drinking a Red Bull? It's like young teen boys. And also my friend, oh no, Miranda liked Monster more. So, but anyways, when she was studying for her DAT, which is what you need to take to get into dental school, she was a little crazy on the energy drinks there a little bit. But they are targeting the right demographic because they're in the right sports. Like, it's really brilliant. And I wonder, yeah, I'm just astounded. It's a freaking energy drink that came to be in like the 1980s is now just infiltrated everything. Like, we literally watched a man drop from like space, like the edge.
I remember that. That was a few years ago, right? Like, what was that? Just like, it was the highest free fall jump or something that someone's ever done, and it wasn't completely free fall. He had his parachute, I'm pretty sure, right?
Well, he had to, or else like,
well, I'm trying to imagine like from that. I would have to rewatch that video, but yeah, Red Bull does stuff like that. Like, only Red Bull does stuff like that. They sponsor the like high dives into the ocean.
They do,
right?
Every extreme sport possible.
And like, you see the Red Bull helmets for the really good like skiers and snowboarders and skateboarders. So
they're everywhere. Another side tangent. Yeah, we're like, actually, no, it's related. It's talking about how
friends, because we're on money.
It's fine. So now we're going to talk about how money moves out of the sport and why the sport is frankly unprofitable. So I mentioned here, one of the things that you see from watching the races and Drive to Survive, and probably not in the last 2+ years, Caitlin, hey, but there are so many people working for each team on, this is like such a wide average, but this is in one of the articles I read. It's between 250 on the smaller side to nearly 1,000, so 950 employees. So let's think about it. You can't just like, Caitlin, having employees is expensive because there's things like matching their retirement. Is that something you're going to offer? You're probably going to offer full healthcare coverage, and all the other benefits that come along with having full-time work. So, and on top of it all, you need to have competitive wages, right? Because how are you going to get the best team principal ever if you're like, here's $45,000, please enjoy trying to live in London? Like, it's not gonna work. Yeah.
But like, you can probably tell, I have a guess that the like 1,000 employees are with Mercedes, like
100% Mercedes. Yeah, that's what.
And the 250, who would that be with? Maybe
I was thinking
Alpine.
That's what I was thinking. No, yeah, on the lower end would be.
So it's like, you can tell that like you have a lot of people that can do a lot of work, and it will help a team, right? So
exactly. So one of the things that I did want to mention, it's not here in the notes, but just tied to the cost cap for next year. Is it next year, Caitlin? 2022, 2023? Is it 2022?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So obviously having to spend all of this stuff, all this money on salaries, again, creates this inequity, because how can you competitively hire people becomes a big question. But because of the cost cap, what they've done is I don't know how Formula One and the FIA like make these random ass rules, but I believe that the people that have the top 3 salaries at the teams like don't need to be counted into the cost cap. So like Toto Wolff can get paid whatever, and it doesn't have to be in the cost cap. So that's a bit of a workaround to make sure that they can still pay the top people the most amount to stay competitive. And we know this is important because Aston Martin is fucking sniping everyone from everywhere right now. So I think people want to retain whoever they can. And one of those things is just paying people well, and maybe too well.
Well, I mean, Toto Wolff has a wife now that's CEO. She's bringing home bacon. He does not need to bring home that much bacon. It is a like dual income house, man.
Also, I'm curious because, you know, he also has ownership in a lot of teams and has this like
his net worth, you guys, is astonishing.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't even know if you need the, you know, the
no
salary.
You can give it to your 1,000 employees. Like, if you take a 1% cut on your salary total, what will it give your 1,000 employees? Like a 2-3% bump on all of theirs? That helps when you're middle class. Would you know? I don't actually know if you know that. I don't know if you grew up middle class, maybe, but like
it's significant.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. I also think there's his name is Dan Price, I think. He's a CEO in Seattle. I've seen some like people like him, some people don't like him. I think it's fair regardless. But what he did at his company is he talked to all of his staff and asked, like, what's the one thing that's causing roadblocks in your life right now? And they said salary. I can't afford to have a child. I can't afford to buy a house. So what he ended up doing was slashing his salary to be the minimum wage at their company, which ends up being $70,000 a year. So he slashed it down from $1 million to 70,000, increased everyone's salary. And what they saw was that people started having babies, buying houses, but also they started retaining more staff.
Yeah.
Their company grew, everything grew, even during a pandemic. So Toto, taking the pay cut when you have ownership in these companies.
Well, yeah, and like the whole thing is like when CEOs take cuts like that, it's like, okay, your salary's not that big, but you're still getting a huge bonus, which doesn't solve this problem, but that's a different discussion.
And I wanted to say, obviously, the biggest employee or the most expensive employee are the drivers themselves. So Lewis Hamilton is on record as being the highest paid driver right now, or as is ever. I don't think Max has topped this yet, with an estimated $30 million for his 1-year contract.
No big deal, 30 million in 1 year.
Yeah.
Doing something you love.
Yeah. Yeah. Calm down. Story of my life. I wish that was me. One of the largest expenses, and we've talked about this so much. Please listen to our sustainability episodes because it just all intermingles together, is logistics. So with COVID, I think one of the benefits for the teams is that they got to see how they could run essentially with a skeleton crew. Like, how can we have everything work with the bare minimum?
To the races and
traveling to the races, the paddock, everything, getting everything set up. Like, who do you need on the crew? All that kind of stuff. And who can actually work remotely or be back at headquarters. So when you really think about it, they need to pay for everything. So that includes transportation, trains, airplanes, the big like ferry things. I don't know what they're called. Hotels, Airbnbs, meals likely, for all of those teammates that actually end up coming. Mm-hmm. And that, my dears, gets very, very expensive. They also need to pay.
They're not putting them up in like Best Westerns.
No, because I was thinking about that though, because I was like, okay, you can just throw everyone up in a Best Western, call it a day. But the reality of it is, a lot of these tracks, there's one that's coming to mind right now, and I don't remember what it's called, but they are kind of not in the city centers, right? So there's hotels maybe around the tracks that are so expensive because of the views that you get, but you need to pay for your staff to stay there because you're only there for like 4 days and then you're gone again. Like, no one can spend time commuting because it's just such a waste of time. So you have to pay the extra fees. I'm sure that they get a group discount.
I think so. Like, it seems that McLaren has a deal with like Hilton, which, by the way, you guys, if you want to go watch a race and you want a chance staying at the same hotel as a McLaren driver, apparently stay at the Hilton. I have Marriott points, so I mean, like, that takes precedence over meeting a driver for me because
Caitlin lived basically in a hotel for 2 years, so she deserves those points and deserves to use them wherever she wants. They also need to pay to ship the equipment, the motorhomes all the way around the world. And we've seen that that can lead to some problems. For example, was it Brazil that the cars didn't
Mexico to Brazil?
It didn't show up. So you best believe next time that they're going to try and pick probably a more expensive avenue, or maybe a more expensive freight or something to get it there sooner. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of supply chain issues right now with COVID. I'm sure that's one of the issues why this took so long. But yeah, that's also very, very expensive. It's also the place, though, like I said, with COVID, they know that they can have skeleton crew teams, but where this is the one thing that they need to cut down the most, hey, for making an impact on their environmental goals and actually making real changes.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see.
What was it? Logistics was like 45% of the emissions for F1
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah. 45% people. That's
In
insane.
2019, prior to COVID, but like
That's insane. That is insane. Talking about the car, this also surprised me because every time we see an accident, I know that all of us cringe. We get worried about people getting hurt. Also, it's just kind of jarring to watch. But I think this season there was a joke about the Yuki maybe like just being so expensive for the team. Like I think he said that in an interview or something, that he's just causing the team a lot of money. And it's because I was under the assumption that because the parts are so light that they would be very inexpensive, and that's wrong. Anyways, according to an article from Sports Rush, each car takes about 10 million to make, and the steering wheel alone is worth $50,000. Not that I'm recommending you steal things, but if you do want to steal something, I feel like the steering wheel would be the one that you probably could steal because they take it off anyway. So if you like,
I think you would get in serious shit there. There's a lot of like IP involved in those, right? All teams have unique steering wheels and they don't want to let each other really know how their steering wheel is, like what their little tricks are on there. So that's why you see the drivers go out with their steering wheels. Like they'll get out of the car and bring the steering wheel with them.
and also
I think you would get in a lot of shit if you stole.
It's also unique to the driver. So like Daniel Ricciardo's setup is different than Lando Norris's, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying you should steal it. I'm just saying it's probably the easiest one to steal.
Could be worth 50 grand.
Because it's not always attached to the car, which is.
I want to also note, tied to the car is like the car itself is costing 10 million to make.
Yeah.
But does that include, I would think like actually additional money on top of that to be for testing of like new parts, because you upgrade some things.
Yeah.
Every time you put in a new engine, that's got to cost you more, right? And we've seen what 3, 4, 5 times, 6 new engines or something for some of these cars.
Exactly. So it's very fucking expensive. That's why. So when they crash and the cost cap coming in, when they crash now, there's going to be a lot of questions on how do you hit that cost cap, make sure you're within the limit if you keep getting into accidents, because you also can't put
it's not your fault.
Yeah, like who gets charged with that? Do they have to pay you money? Do you just get a free allowance to put in whatever was broken? Like there's a lot of questions. And also you can't just have the drivers driving out there with a broken piece on their vehicle because it's also unsafe. So there's a lot of things. And I also think was it Alfa Romeo this season? I don't know if this is a headline or just kind of a snippet, but I was looking at Formula racers on Twitter and they were saying that one of the teams, I think it was Alfa Romeo, is at the end of their lifespan with some of the parts on their vehicles. So they're kind of like holding on to the rest of the season because they can't afford to put any more into the cars. So things to think about, I guess. The final numbers, which I think is important to mention, is that the top teams, Mercedes and Red Bull, spend up to $175 million a year on this sport and to keep Formula One going alive. Caitlin, what is the cost cap? Oh, I have it written down here. Never mind. We're going to talk about it. So obviously inequity amongst the teams is a huge, huge, huge issue. $175 million. Caitlin, I don't have that money. You don't have that money. If for Alfa Romeo, we probably also don't have that kind of money. And there is an importance in just making it a level playing field. So it isn't just Mercedes and Red Bull at the top of their game, at the top of the heat all the time. So coming into, I don't know if this is correct, Caitlin. It says 2021.
I think it might be because your next point talks about it going down.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. So the Formula One teams are supposed to, or we're supposed to work within a $145 million budget cap in 2021. It includes no fewer than 20 different lines on a team's budget is excluded though from that number. And like I said, that includes the driver salaries, the salaries of the 3 highest paid employees, and marketing costs. So there's still some things that are not covered by the cost cap, which makes it still keeps a bit of a gap going between all the teams, which is unfortunate. And the cap is also scheduled to come down next year in 2022, down to 140 million. And then by 2023, it should be down to 135 million. It's also hoped that the revenue will increase at some point at which the smaller teams would be able to cover just the basic costs from the prize money that comes through the Constructors' Championship. Under the terms of the previous deal, smaller teams got around $50 to $70 million a year. But with the new deal, they get $60 to $70 million a year. Did I say that twice? I think that's wrong. Under the previous deal, the smaller teams got $50 million a year, and now they'll be getting $60 to $70 million a year. So it's a little bit more money, which is good. And there also seems to be some conversation that with the cost cap and this renegotiation that's happening, that all of the extra payments that we talked about earlier, so the like the weird back end deal for Red Bull for being in there long term, Mercedes doing back-to-back wins, Ferrari's just huge long-standing team payment for just existing, those seem to be on their way out as well. They want to stop them, but I think the issue that they have now is that the teams are so used to getting them that how do you go to like Toto Wolff and Co. or Matteo Benito and be like, we're not doing this anymore. Like, you're not going to get this money. I think I just would imagine those conversations would be very difficult. So
yes, I would second that thought.
So that's it on the economics of Formula One and kind of where the money comes in to the teams and the sport itself, where it goes out.
It's wild.
And yeah, I really do hope though that they get rid of the extra payments, because I think it's ridiculous that oddly though.
I'm sorry to all Tifosi and Ferrari fans.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting all this extra money. They're getting the most money out of everyone.
Yeah.
They're still not winning.
Yeah, they're still not winning. But we've said this many times. I think they're on their way for sure.
They're on their way. The management, we've been over this, I think, is part of your problem.
So we'll end up seeing what happens. But yeah, I as much as I want them to end the extra sort of back end payments, I still want Williams to get the Heritage Fund, because they have what is it, Doralton Group now? Yeah, it's Doran something with a D group that is an investment group that bought them.
I think so.
There's money in investment groups, but what I think is funny is with that, I thought that they wouldn't have Nicholas Latifi because they wouldn't need him, and they said that they don't need a paid driver anymore, but then they kept him, and I was like, but
it goes into the theory. Do you guys? We did an episode where we were talking. Oh, it's the Williams sustainability episode.
Yeah.
Where we're like, who has the stake in Doralton? That's like, I want to buy into a motorsport company, because they had nothing to do with motorsport. And now Nicholas Latifi is staying on.
Do we think his dad, billionaire
dad? The hypothesis just grows that it is Nicholas Latifi's dad involved with Doralton. We're not spreading rumors. We're just hypothesizing.
We're not spreading rumors. It's true. He's got a lot of money. Being a part of an investment group is not surprising to me personally, so I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I don't think they need to keep him. I hope they keep that fund for them. Mercedes and Red Bull, you don't need this much money. You need to stop with all of this. So that's all I got, folks.
Okay, you want to get political right now?
As we mentioned, we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, and they've given us the space today to shout out a fellow Alberta Podcast Network podcast instead of doing an ad. So we wanted to put the spotlight on Anti-Culture, which is an award-winning podcast by Josiah that seeks to challenge and reestablish our view on what culture and identity really mean by listening intently to the unique experiences of those around us. So if you want to listen to Anti-Culture, you can head to wherever you listen to your podcasts or albertabodcast.com.
end of the episode.
Okay, yeah, we can.
You know what people? So they're making so much money. Some of these guys, right?
Yeah.
What else could you put the money towards? Helping get vaccines to third world countries, so we don't have any more variants coming up. You guys.
Okay, so Caitlin is supposed to go on vacation in Hawaii to Hawaii. Surprise! Sorry, this is a spoiler, but it's happening. Later this week actually, and now there's a lot of confusion over what's going to happen with the variants that are spreading.
The Omicron variant's the new one. Yep.
So there might be just more work for her to travel, and
the fact that like first world countries, like Canada's up to giving people their third shot.
Yeah,
right?
and no one.
There's numbers saying that like in third world countries, 7% of the population has been vaccinated for the first time. And
Yeah,
it's like no wonder variants are still happening.
It's a problem. And we're gonna shut on Canada a little bit more. We can still love our country, but still be like there's massive problems. So Canada actually, when vaccines were first announced, we meaning our prime minister, bought 10 for each person that could get vaccinated in our country. 10. And as much as he said, well, when we get them, we'll donate the rest when we don't need them. It's not great. I mean, we did go through COVAX, like the US cut a check to COVAX as well, but there's a lot of issues. And I think we're collectively just sad watching this repeat all over again. But to be honest, this is something that I knew was going to come. Like,
yeah, Shanika called it.
Yeah,
like a year ago.
Over a year ago. As soon as vaccines came, I was like, oh, the third world countries are not going to get vaccinated. And if we're going to get more political, I hate calling third world countries third world, because in reality, they're just recovering from like colonialism and imperialism. So all of these European nations just coming and pillaging their lands for everything. So they're just getting double whammied, and it's really sad. I have my extended family lives in Sri Lanka. And when people are like, oh, aren't you excited to travel and go see them? I'm like, no, because they can't get vaccinated. There's no vaccines for them. And when there's no vaccines, where do countries go? They go to countries that they shouldn't. They go to Russia and China to get those vaccines, which is also not good, Caitlin, because politically we don't want more countries aligning with Russia and China. And also those vaccines have not been, the contents of them have not been handed over to WHO. So then it's like those people can't come into this country, essentially, to Canada if they wanted to. It's a fucking mess. Unfortunately, I do think I hope for our lifetime this is the last pandemic that we ever see. Probably not, though. So we need to approach vaccine equity better. And if you're in a country where you can get vaccinated, please, and for the love of God, please get vaccinated. We are sick and tired of this. So just please get vaccinated if you're eligible, and you have no other like reasons why you can't get it. Just please get it. Please get it. Yeah. So
it's a nice side.
I know. I'm like, I feel bad. We should have on a better note. Our next race, Caitlin, where is it?
You know what? That was an okay note. Okay, people, we need to open up that discussion.
Yeah.
There's people making $30 million right now. And people that live in countries where 7% of the population has had a vaccine for a pandemic, aka like a world problem.
It's true.
Anyways,
it's true.
Okay. Well, we are heading to Saudi Arabia for the next race. Next week, I would hopefully be in Hawaii. We'll keep you all updated on that. Is the track built?
Giant question. We'll find out next week. And Caitlin and I will probably have a lot more heated opinions about having multiple races in the Middle East and what that means for this sport. So I'm sorry, the politics are here to stay.
That's what you get with us, though. So, I mean, maybe that's
our podcast. It's what we can talk about. But other than that, friends, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, at Get Checkered on everything. I think we're more popular on TikTok, so maybe follow us there.
TikTok's fun,
Yeah. And other than that, what do we say?
Stay checkered as always. Friends.
Yeah. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you at the next one.
Bye.